Hello guys and welcome back to my channel for another Football Manager video, and we can finally start talking about Football Manager 2021. SI have announced the date that the game is due to come out. It is due to come out on Tuesday the 24th of November 2020, and I am super excited. So basically what I'm going to cover today are 5 things that I wish would be in the game. Obviously they've not released a full set of things that they are updating for this game, so I thought it'd be a good time to jump into some of the things that bug me, and hopefully they can sort for FM21. Let's get into it. So guys, before we jump into things, I will say, as the release date for Football Manager has now been announced, you can pre-order yourself a copy of the game right now. You can do that by clicking on the link that is at the top of the description. That's my personal link to CD Keys. CD Keys, in my opinion, is the cheapest version of the game out there. It's cheaper than Steam. It's cheaper than the Epic Store. You can jump on CD Keys. You will get an instant delivery of your code. You put that code, it's a redeem code basically. So you put the redeem code into your Steam and you will get access to the game. Basically, it's slightly cheaper than Steam at $26.99, and you get the instant delivery, but it also gives you access to the public beta, which usually comes out 2 weeks before the game. So if you want to get your hands on that, make sure you jump into the description, click on that link below and pre-order yourself a copy of Football Manager 2021 right now. So first things first, I want to kick things off talking about the graphical capabilities of Football Manager. When I think football games and within the gaming sphere, I think Football Manager, I think FIFA, and I think Pro Evo. Now, I'm not expecting the graphical quality of a FIFA or a Pro Evo in terms of the match engine, but I would like some slight improvements and some slight alterations to the way things come across. In terms of stadiums and stuff, I think the stadiums are a little bit poor. You could put a little bit of work into that, and also in terms of the way kits look in game and, you know, little graphical tweaks that I don't think are too much to ask for. Obviously, I'm not expecting a full sexy 3D FIFA-esque gameplay, because I know a lot of people still do play the game in 2D, so I'm not expecting a great deal. I know it all features down to processing power and the ability of your computer / laptop that you're playing on. I do get that, but I just think that you could do some slight graphical tweaks which really add into the game. Another thing, whilst I'm on the topic of graphics, it is something for me, it's new gen faces. There's just so many things wrong with them. They seem so dated. If you go back looking at some of the other versions of Football Manager, like I'm doing a save in Football Manager 2010 right now, and things haven't advanced that much in that 10-year span. When you look at some of the stuff that's out there in terms of the main example that springs to mind is Chilled Moose and the unbelievable new gen faces that you can get from there. I'll put an image on the screen now so that you guys can see what I'm talking about, but the detail in the comparison is just next level. It is honestly night and day, the difference between them. I don't think it would take a great deal to hire an artist to come up with all of these concepts and then just have them in the game. Again, I know it comes down to file size and processing power to be able to adhere to that, but I think it's a very nice option. And if you had that option to turn on new gen faces that looked as good as these, I think a lot of people would do it. So that's another thing. Whilst I am still talking about graphics, another thing that pops into my mind is talking about skins. There are so many good different FM skins out there, but I think that Football Manager themselves should offer something that's more than just the basic purple. I'm so fed up of seeing purple. I personally play in the dark skin. Obviously, I know there's the light skin as well, which in my opinion is basically unusable. I just like to see a little bit more variation. Obviously, again, it's one of those things. There's so many people out there that produce such good content in terms of graphics and skins and new gen faces and stuff like that. I just think that they should really tap into that market and pull some of that into the game, and fingers crossed that is something they can do for Football Manager 2021. If not, maybe Football Manager 2022. So the next section I want to talk to you guys about is tactics. Now, everyone knows that the Gegenpress has been broken in Football Manager 2020. It is the tactic at the moment. Obviously, I know it's been very successful with Liverpool in real life, so I can understand why it has been successful in the game. That is what happens in football. You find a style that works and that brings success in modern football, and people want to recreate that in the game, and I totally understand that. So I'm not necessarily asking for a nerf to Gegenpress or anything like that, but I'd like to see more tactical styles be viable. I'm not necessarily calling on like a vertical tiki-taka or anything like that to be improved or whatever. I just want like a few more different styles to be effective. And whilst we are on that note, I'd like there to be a little bit more depth, and mainly this comes down to the different formations that you guys can have when you're in possession and when you're out of possession. So for those of you guys who are new around here, I am running Manamai FM's back attack. I'll put a card in for Steve's video here. It's a great tactic. I'm using it in my Longwell Green save. I'm using it in my Bath City save. Is absolutely phenomenal. But his formation, has two centre backs. Now, I understand that this is part of the formation. So he plays with two centre-backs and a half-back. I'll put an image to the shape on screen now so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. But basically, the half-back that plays in front of them drops and sort of dictates the play. He drops in between the two centre-backs and dictates the play either side, and the attacks come down from the wings, which is great. However, I have a period of time where sometimes when we don't have the ball, my fullbacks are still quite advanced. Now, I understand that that's part of the formation, and that's sort of what happens, but maybe something that we could say about, if we're attacking down the left hand side, maybe you could say, okay, well, right hand side fullback, maybe you can tuck in a bit and offer that bit more of a support in terms of what happens in real life football. When you see certain wingers go bombing down, or Trent Alexander-Arnold, for instance, when Trent Alexander-Arnold goes bombing down the right hand side for Liverpool, you will see Andy Robertson tuck in a little bit, and vice versa when they're going down the left hand side. It happens in modern football, so I'd love to see something like that happen in Football Manager, where you could obviously customize what happens a little bit more in terms of player instructions, but also a little bit more depth in terms of shape when you have the ball and when you don't have the ball. I'd love to see something like that implemented. Obviously, you can do that in terms of if you're playing a 3-5-2 when you do have the ball. You may want to play a 5-3-2 when you don't have the ball, and obviously drop those fullbacks a lot further, a lot deeper, and hopefully that would soak up some of the pressure. And then obviously when you're in possession again, obviously those fullbacks move on. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but that's sort of where my thinking is. Basically a little bit more in terms of player instructions, but also different formations and different styles for when you have the ball and also when you don't have the ball. So next up, I want to talk to you about player potential. Now, we've all found that wonder kid from the corner of the globe that is going to drastically improve our team and obviously make everything 10 times better and 10 times easier. They're going to be the next Messi. They're going to be the next Ronaldo, Pele, Maradona, whoever you idolize. They're going to be the next big thing. I understand that. However, it seems like there's nothing firm and concrete about that player. Obviously, we all know that certain players have fixed potential and certain players don't. So, for instance, Sebastiano Esposito has a fixed potential in FM20, so he's always going to be within a certain range. However, not every player, real or not, has that. It's all dynamic, and it all sort of depends on what happens in their save in terms of game time and who they play for and their training facilities and their coaches and the blah 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 blah. The list is endless. I'd like to see it a little bit more fixed. So I'm actually going to lean on FIFA here. Don't judge me. Don't abort the channel. Don't unsubscribe. I know this is a Football Manager channel predominantly, but I want to lean on FIFA and what they do here in terms of their career mode. When you get someone, you can figure out what their cap is and how good they're going to be. Now you can look at a player and you think, okay, so they are like in FIFA, like Rodrigo this year, I think is a 79 rated in career mode, but you can get him up to a 93, 94, I think, if you put the time in. And I'd like to see that rewarded in Football Manager. Obviously, you have the star system, but everyone knows that the star system is pretty flawed. It's all based down to interpretation of how good your coach is versus how good the player is versus how they interpret that data, and I prefer to not have it all sort of left up to interpretation. I'd like something a little bit more concrete. So maybe adding in something like something that you can see, basically a number rather than a scale, I think would be infinitely beneficial to players. Whether or not they add that in once they get into your club, I think that might be a good a good judge. Whereas if you go on to the scout report, you still get the star system, but once that player actually joins your team, you can see, okay, well, that was money well spent. I've actually justified it. You know, this player could grow to a world-class player, you know. I just think the star system's a little bit vague and a little bit outdated. Once they're into your club, I'd like a lot more detail in terms of how good these wonder kids can be, and I think this is a very good step that they could take to make that improvement. My next feature on the wish list is something that combines two things that are very close to my heart and things that I think are imperative in Football Manager, and that is set pieces and coaches. Now, I personally think that there should be a set piece coach in Football Manager. I think it should be a staff role that is vitally important. Obviously, you've seen in real life, Liverpool have been leaning on that in terms of having a set piece coach for their throw-ins and their corners and their free kicks and stuff like that. And I think it is something that clubs are going to rely on more and more, and I think it should be something that's in the game. Obviously, I personally think that having the best coaching setup enables you to do the best. I've done various videos on coaches and their importance, but I also think that set pieces are also an imperative way of scoring goals in Football Manager. I don't necessarily just think it is corners. I think it is free kicks. I think it is throw-ins. I think it's everything that you need to encompass in the modern day and the modern game. And to just put that into the game and make it a little bit more refined, and it's not just a technical coach that is working on that. I think it's so much more than that in real life football, and I'd love to see that feature added in. I think it's imperative. I think the amount of people who overlook coaches and also overlook set pieces, because the set piece system is so complicated and so complex that if you set up a free kick routine for defending free kicks, for instance, and you've got a certain player, your right centre back is set to mark the tallest player or whatever, and then in game you have to move them around because of an injury or something like that, you completely lose all that. So I'd like to see a set piece coach come in and say, well, we've actually like an interaction that you could have, and it'd be like, well, we've actually conceded a lot of corners from the near post. Here's my suggestion on how we can refine that set piece and make it better so that we stop conceding. Or it could be like, you know, as part of the analysis section, you know, they sort of feed in to be like, your analysis says, we're playing Liverpool at the weekend, they've conceded 7 free kicks, 3 throw-ins, whatever. I think we should target and try and play this way, and actually enable you to tailor a game plan more specifically to playing certain people. I think it would be a great little addition. Obviously, in my mind, seeing someone like Bolton from years ago when they were in the Premier League, they targeted things like set pieces and how they were going to disrupt teams. Stoke did it with Rory Delap with his long throw. I just think it's such a vitally important aspect of Football Manager, and I think it would add an extra layer of depth and stuff that does happen in real life football. You have analysis going on and you find out all these defects in the teams that you're going to play, and I just like it to be a little bit more intuitive in terms of actually being able to customize set piece routines for opponents at each time. I'd love to see that. It's something I'd get so engrossed in looking at all the different stats and the ways that we could score against different opponents from set plays. I'd spend a year on it. Honestly, I could spend the whole year just sat looking at, okay, so we've got this set piece routine for this team, and we've got this set piece routine for this team, and this team's weak at this area. I'd love it. I'd be all over it, and I just love that level of detail. It's what Football Manager is at the end of the day. It's that level of detail that makes me love this game infinitely more than FIFA Career Mode, and that's what I'd love to see added into this game as well. And last up on my list is just more player interactions. I'd love to see more come out of like a team bonding session, or relationships that have soured within the club, like so-and-so doesn't like so-and-so. I'm not necessarily saying like bust-ups on the field, like a Lee Bowyer, Kieran Dyer situation, but just more interaction and more things going wrong in a club. Like, obviously, from someone who's worked in a football club myself. Granted, I was in the media department, I wasn't a player, but I've worked in a professional football club, and these sorts of things do happen. Falling outs between players, and just general interactions that don't necessarily go the way you expect it. And not everything is going to be rosy at a football club. Like, you know, if something goes wrong in a game, people do blame players for instances that happen. I'd love to see a little bit more in terms of that. Things going wrong at a club, like, you know, you wonder kid's gone out drinking the night before a massive game. It happens in football. Obviously, the stuff that's more recently happened with Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood getting caught bringing girls back to their room in the COVID times. These things happen in football clubs. I'd love to be able to react to that and be able to dictate fines and what actually happens to the player. I think that would be another level of customization. But whilst we are talking about player relationships, the thing that really frustrates me when I look at my team selection is the fact that players can't have relationships with players that aren't in their group. So what I mean by that, to explain it a little bit more, is like your centre backs can only have relationships with centre backs, or your fullbacks can only have relationships with wingers, and they have a positive relationship. Whereas, for instance, if you'd look at a team, and why wouldn't the right centre back develop a relationship with the right back, so that, you know, if the right back goes over, that, you know, they would develop that relationship. So I'd like to see the relationship section in terms of on the field and in the tactics section actually reflect what would happen in real life. Obviously, I'm not expecting, you know, your centre back to have a green link to your striker. I'm not expecting that, but obviously in terms of where they play around, like your formation, like developing between centre backs and full backs and centre mids and fullbacks as well. So it might be a case of, you know, if you've got a defensive midfielder, they've got a relationship with that right back, so that if the right back goes on for an attack, the defensive midfielder sort of fills in. Again, it kind of leads into the tactics section that I did, the tactics customization that I mentioned earlier, but it's just certain stuff like that I think would add so much more customization to your team and make them play exactly how you want them. Just the relationship section, I think it needs to be addressed, that it needs to be improved. I'm not necessarily criticizing the current system. I just like to see more. That's kind of what I expect from Football Manager in terms of depth. I just love more depth. I'd love things to go wrong that you need to react to. Like I said, with Foden and Greenwood, I'd love that sort of stuff. I'd love the scandal, basically. That's kind of what I want. I want scandal in Football Manager. So that is it for my features video, guys. If you have enjoyed it and think that some of these are good features, drop a like on it. If you don't, if you disagree, or if you want anything else in the game, let me know in the comments section. Subscribe to my channel as well for daily Football Manager content, and don't forget you can pre-order your copy of Football Manager 2021 by clicking on the top link in the description. I will be back tomorrow for another episode of my Started from the Bottom series. Hopefully I'll catch you guys there.